Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Westward Whoa, released in 1936. It's the 129th in the series and it's directed by Jack King. You can find this on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set. I have a link below to that set, and it has the first 101 Porky Pig shorts, 99 of them in black and white and 2 of them in colour. But lucky for you, or maybe unlucky for you, depending on your tolerance for Jack King shorts, it's actually in the public domain, so I'll have the short playing at the end. Just be mindful of the stereotypes, as it is a product of its time. Just for consistency's sake, even though yes, you can see the whole thing at the end, but I'll just give you a synopsis anyway. So you have Beans and Little Kitty alongside Porky, Ham and X and other pioneers. They're traveling via a wagon trail over to the western frontier. They find a place to settle down for a little bit, where Ham and X go and play, and they fool around pretending that the Indians are coming, and everyone takes it seriously at first, but when there are actual Indians, no one believes Ham and X, but, well, if you know the story of the boy who cried wolf, this is essentially what it is. And the idea in of itself isn't actually a bad one. I just wish it was executed better. But in terms of trivia, the big one is that this closes a chapter in Looney Tunes history, in that it's the last short to feature Beans, Little Kitty, and Ham and X. Porky barely has anything to do in this short, but after this one, he becomes the main star of the studio. Later on, his star would be eclipsed by Bugs Bunny, but for the rest of the 1930s, he was the face of the Looney Tunes cartoons. Based on feedback from theatergoers, based on feedback from their audiences, people couldn't get enough of Porky, and so the decision was made to focus on Porky as a character. And no doubt part of that would be due to his uniqueness, in terms of the voice being a stutter, done in this case by Joe Dougherty, who had a real-life stutter at the time. But design-wise, he was just different, and audiences certainly responded to it, because if you look at Beans, what is he? He's a cat that looks like a lot of the early 1930s animated characters of the time. He was nothing special, there was nothing to him, he was just so incredibly bland. Now, Porky as a character would evolve over time, of course, but even at this early stage, he was still different enough for audiences to respond to something that was incredibly new. And just to round up the rest of the voice acting here, so as I already mentioned, you got Joe Dougherty as Porky, you have Tommy Bond as Beans, and Bernice Hansel as Kitty. And it sounds like Ham and X is also done by Bernice Hansel as well. Although there is 1 or 2 line reads from Beans yelling at Indians. It sounds like a different person altogether, so I'm wondering if that was originally intended for another character, but they changed it so Beans says it, but they didn't bother re-recording the voice. It sounds very bizarre. Or it could be Tommy Bond voicing another character. If it was someone else, it'd be likely just some staff member that happened to be around. But this short is essentially a parody of a lot of the westward-bound movies of the time, where it'd be about wagon trails heading into the far west, and we see all the dangers that they face, because if you know the history of the wagon trails heading out west, it was so fraught with danger. Not everyone would survive in a lot of these wagon trails. In certain cases, they'd be attacked by the Native American population. You've got the weather, you've got the elements. If you're injured, there are no hospitals around, so it was all fraught with danger. But I guess if you're really desperate to start a new life, you'd go through anything, right? One good example of a movie that dealt with this was Raoul Walsh's The Big Trail, starring John Wayne in one of his earlier roles, that dealt with exactly the same topic. They're heading out west and you have the Native American population involved. But many, many others were made. In fact, there were so many westerns made around this time, a lot of it done cheaply too, but they dealt with this topic. So that's what this is a parody of. The name itself, Westward Whoa, it was actually even used a few times in the 20s for a few silent shorts. But this short essentially is just playing on the whole wagon trail idea. And this is certainly not the first time, nor it's the last time that this sort of topic would be dealt with. What I did find interesting is that when I was doing my research for this, someone noted that this was actually colorized in the 90s. So I'm curious if that was actually shown because of the stereotyping at the end, and it's actually way worse than usual when it comes to Native American depictions. I'm curious, was that ever shown on TV where you are? So definitely leave a note in the comments if this was ever played. Or was it just a case of that, yeah, they just went ahead and did it before they realized, oh no, we can't show this one to kids. But then again, you had many shorts still being played on television depicting Native American stereotypes even up until late 90s, so I guess anything's possible. But I'm definitely curious if you saw this in a colorized format. But what we're going to do is go through the short from start to finish, and I'll go through my observations, and see whether this one is an improvement when it comes to Jack King shorts, because, yeah, if you've been following this channel, I have been very critical of Jack King's directing, and as I've already mentioned before in other videos, he definitely does a much better job once he goes to Disney. No doubt he would have been helped by better story artists at the time, versus here, where everything just feels like it's by the numbers. So we open up with our wagon trail, and if you're wondering what the song is, it's called Covered Wagon Days. And the music's by M.K. Jerome, and if that name sounds familiar to you, he has done quite a few bits of music that Carl Starling would end up using once he takes over the music for the Warner Brothers shorts. But I'll admit, I do like the animation of the wagon trails as it's traveling along. You got the cows moving along to the music. There's nothing really wrong with this. It's not particularly funny, but not everything has to be. It can be charming, and honestly, this opening bit's not that bad. We end up seeing Porky, and he's on a wheelbarrow in the most unsecure looking thing I've ever seen. But I guess he's good at balancing because he's sitting on top the way he is. But yeah, a lot of the times you'll find with Jack King shorts, he does a lot of things where it just seems like, oh, let's just do this strange thing because it's funny, but there's really no payoff or whatever to it. In this case, it's just Porky's in a weird wheelbarrow contraption thing. Here it's fine, but you'll notice in the rest of the short there'll be moments where it's just, oh, let's just do this funny bit of business, but there's really nothing that warrants it. So we see one of our other Frontier characters whom will play a bigger part in a lot of the battles later on. This unnamed character that always seems to have a drink in his hand, because, you know, drinking's funny, right? I do like the expression of the donkey there. I mean, it's pretty much my face whenever I watch some of these earlier Jack King shorts. So Miss Kitty spots a good place to camp for the evening, and it's weird how she just starts talking and explaining why it's such a good place to camp, and then we just fade out. Was there supposed to be a gag here where she just talks too much or something? I don't know, it's a bit bizarre. But we see a nice little dance scene, and I mean, there's nothing really ambitious about this scene, it's just one shot. Where I'll give Jack King credit here, the background characters are animated very crudely, but then again, there are background characters, whereas other directors like Friz Freleng might have just opted for a painted background and that's it. But I do wonder who this pig character is. I mean, is this Porky Pig's wife? Because we don't actually see this character afterwards. In fact, when I first watched this, I thought, oh, is that Porky Pig wearing a dress for some reason? But no. Could be his wife, or just another generic pig, I don't know. Or is this prototype Petunia Pig? Uh-oh. Don't worry, I'm not going to start spreading that little conspiracy, but in any case, they're dancing to Oh Susanna, which is a staple when it comes to the time period. I like in the next shot, though, you got Beans, he's just dancing along on his own. It's like, what, so no one wants to dance with you, not even Miss Kitty? But anyway, he just stops, and Ham and Egg say they're going to play Indians, and they're warned to watch out for real Indians. Which, okay, fair enough. And they end up seeing what seems to be a Native American headdress, but no, it's a turkey. So these rapscallions decide to shout out Indians, Indians. And I'm sure you all know what to expect. You get various scenes of quote-unquote funny business where they're overreacting to the fact that you've got Indians. And honestly, if there really were Native Americans that were attacking at this point in time, they would be woefully inadequate to defend a little campsite. If anything, all of the stray bullets around would end up probably hitting a lot of the other wagon trailers. So you've got Beans dropping some logs, shouting Indians in that really different voice. Again, I'm wondering if that still is Tommy Bond or just another staff member. You see a dog in the water, he's just shooting a bullet which bounces around, which again, on its own, it might have seemed funny to Jack King or whoever wrote this, but in the context of the short, it's just okay. We see our drunken dog again, jumping into the oven and starts shooting. Now, what would have probably made that funnier is if maybe the oven was already going, or maybe they do it this time around like this, but then they do it again a second time, but there was something in the oven that time. See, that would be probably more funnier. But no, all those straight bullets, I wonder if he's accidentally shot anyone in the campsite there, because it just seems like he's just blindly shooting everywhere. So Beans notices the headdress, shoots and realizes, oh, he's actually shot a turkey. But then he does that frozen in terror stance that he's done in quite a few Ham and X shorts where he just looks shocked, he just stands perfectly still. I wonder if they were just trying to do that to make it a little bit of a trademark movement for him or something. I mean, it's not funny and it's not particularly memorable. Only people like me who's watched all the Ham and X shorts would even remember that. But Ham and X, they're laughing at the whole situation. And Beans ends up warning them, saying someday an Indian will catch you, and he ends up doing the killing motion to his neck, which doesn't seem to scare off Ham and X because, you know, they're such rapscallions, right? And so they end up doing the quote-unquote Hollywood version of the Native American whooping that you hear, which you'd think that Beans would recognize as them doing it, right? Because they're young kids, but whatever. It's a Jack King short, it's nothing too deep. So again, Beans drops what he's doing, he's looking for the Native Americans. We see essentially a repeat of what happened before, but with the characters doing different things. So now this dopey-looking dog ends up jumping in the water and just shoots, and he's pushed along the water. Again, what did anyone think that was funny? And the drunken dog, again, it would have been probably funnier if he actually jumped back into that oven, but it was actually switched on that time, and then he goes, yow, and jumps out or something. But no, they do something different. They just have him in what I'm assuming is like a bison-type skeleton or a cow skeleton, and there's really no payoff or anything to it. It's just shooting from the mouth, and that's it. In a weird bit of staging, you have Ham and X laughing. One of them then points over that Beans is coming along and they end up hiding, but you'd think with the way Beans walks up, he would have seen Ham and X, but he walks up as though he didn't see them at all. It's a very weird bit of staging there. And then just breaks the fourth wall and ends up shrugging. Wow, I don't even know what to say to that. So Ham and X try again, and we then see why this was taken off television. This has to be one of the worst looking Native American depictions I've ever seen in classic animation. Granted, their depictions of Native Americans were never the greatest, right? But definitely some depictions were way better than others, and this has to be one of the worst. Is this supposed to be a dog version of a Native American? Just looks so grotesque here. It's ridiculous. So yeah, we get the payoff when it comes to the boy who cried wolf that, oh, as expected, are real Indians here. So he's chasing after him and he's got this loincloth which barely covers anything. In fact, not only is the design awful, but it's so crudely animated too. Because we go from one animator where they first see the Indian, and then in the next shot, you got the Indian chasing after him, but it looks like it's animated by somebody else. And we get a very ho-hum moment of the Indian getting stuck in the log. Ham and X just end up pelting him backwards and forwards. And we cut back to camp where we see Beans and Miss Kitty. They're doing the laundry together. How nice. And they think it's all quaint. Oh, the boys are just playing Indians. Okay. We see Porky again, and we hear him for the first time here. He's peeling potatoes, doing what he needs to do for the camp. And he breaks the fourth wall too, saying, oh yeah, the kids are just playing Indians and so on. And you'll notice because Joe Dougherty had a real life stutter, it took ages to record him. So a lot of the earlier Porky shorts, they would limit his dialogue, so they wouldn't have to record as much with him because, yeah, if he stumbled on a line, it would have to restart his line delivery. It was only until Mel Blanc came aboard and did the voice of Porky, and he was able to control the stutter, where you start hearing Porky talk more and more. So Ham and X continue pelting the Indian, eventually knocking him out, and he ends up hitting a tree. The boys run back to camp, and they see two other Native Americans who are not as crudely designed as the first one, although they still look kind of weird, but anyway. If you look at certain shots, their loincloths don't really cover anything. There's just nothing there. It's, again, just really crudely drawn. But the boys run back to camp, and Porky just shrugs, thinking, oh yeah, it's still a game. And the boys end up hiding in a chest. Porky breaks the fourth wall, saying, oh yeah, those boys must think we're pretty dumb. But we see that one of the Native Americans shoots an arrow. So Porky calls the alarm, and we see a whole bunch of them just race on and start shooting at the campground. Probably the best animated shot is Porky trying to sound the alarm, and he's absolutely struggling. I mean, yeah, it's making fun of his stuttering, I know, but still animation-wise, it's still pretty good. So he's trying to say Indian, he gets shot by an arrow, and then eventually the word comes out. I wonder who would have animated that shot. That's really detailed. I mean, look at the face with all the wrinkles and the struggling of him trying to say the word Indian. And we see the drunken character again, and again, there's no real payoff here. So the whole short, he's just always has a jug. He's always drinking. Here he's got a very large bottle. What would have made this more funnier is if in every single shot, the bottle just gets bigger and bigger, and then you would have had the payoff here with this comically large jug. But what do I know? So the jug gets shot, and I'll admit, I do like that one very brief moment of this drunken character looking at his arms in despair that he's just lost his jug of drink, and he looks on and sees, oh yeah, we're being attacked, and he starts shooting. So now we get, honestly, just a whole bunch of quote-unquote funny business, which isn't particularly funny. So the Native Americans are circling the whole wagon trail. Some are actually in the camp itself, so one even attacks Beans and Miss Kitty, but Miss Kitty does the smart thing and just pulls a bit of the laundry and ends up having the handle knock out that Native American. I do like the animation once we see the close-up of the handle actually hitting this Native American. Got the whole vibration animation surrounding it, but again, it's not particularly funny, but it's just an interesting effect that they do there. And one thing you'll notice in this last act is a lot of the guns don't seem to shoot straight. They all have to be animated, so you've got the barrels just curling over as the shots all coming out. So Beans is next to the oven, he's shooting on, his hat gets shot by an arrow, and so the Native American shoots many arrows, and we get what you would expect. The oven door is open, and the arrows come back and end up getting that Native American. So in a bit that you just know if Tex Avery did this, it would have been a lot more funnier, but you have one pioneer running along, he's clearly wearing a wig. He just gives the wig to the Native American and he's happy because he just wanted the scalp, I guess. Sure, okay. But it's just done so ineptly here where you think, okay, sure, that thing happened. So we're at one of the wagons. The Native American decides to bend his arrow to shoot one of the pioneers, but it ends up backfiring and ends up boomeranging onto the Native American's bottom. And keep in mind, these are sharp arrows, so that would have seriously hurt. And in a moment here, which feels like a Three Stooges moment, but the timing is just a bit off here. So you've got Beans approaching one of the Native Americans who's shooting a gun, no less, as opposed to an arrow like in the other shots. He gets knocked out, but then the person behind Beans gets knocked out as well, who was actually approaching him. The next bit's kind of clever. You got Porky, he's rocking the 2 shotguns. He's a master shooter after all. But his pants keep on falling down because the strap in the back ends up getting shot, and we can see part of his bottom there. But in a clever twist, an arrow comes through and it ends up patching things together, so at least that's clever. And Porky just continues shooting on. Is it the greatest moment in the world? No, but I'll give it credit. At least it is kind of clever. And then we see Ham and X, they're in a chest of drawers. They end up knocking out this Native American who ends up chopping the chest of drawers in half. And he ends up grabbing Ham and X by the neck, which is something I really wanted to do to these characters after watching their terrible shorts. But we see Beans do something that's really insane, just picking up an open bear trap, swinging it, and throwing it onto the Native American who ends up getting his butt clamped. And again, those things were sharp, so I would assume that he would be suffering some life-threatening injuries there due to infections and such. I would imagine that bear trap would be rusty as well. But in any case, we got to have our ending where Ham and X sees the last Native American running away. Beans does a fake whoop and ends up scaring Ham and X, who hide back in the chest, and we end right there. Yeah, this shot's not good. It's not good. There are a few elements I did like, some bits of animation. I do like the music in this one, and a couple of gags made me chuckle, but ultimately, it's just a very ho-hum short that's not particularly great. This one gets a 4 out of 10, and shows why Ham and X, Beans, and Miss Kitty weren't particularly great characters. They were just ordinary, but as I've already mentioned, Jack King will do much better work over at Disney, and he will do a similar Ham and X type thing, but with Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So there's that. Even there, he was never the most ambitious director, but you can't deny that the results over there were way better. But look, you be the judge. You let me know what you think of this short. Let me know in the comments as well. And also, again, if you saw this on TV, like in a colorized format, I definitely want to know. But that'll do it for this one. Until next time, guys, take care.
Just those kids trying to fool you again. Those kids must think we're pretty dumb. Indians!